Number of Jews are returning to Israel. It's part of a fulfillment of prophecy spoken in the Bible.
A lost tribe, a forgotten prophecy, a return that stunned the world. For nearly 2,700 years, they were hidden, scattered across continents, buried in silence, remembered only in whispers. But now, they've come back. In the misty hills of northeast India, a people known as the Bnei Menashe, the children of Manasseh, have claimed an identity no one believed. Descendants of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. For centuries, their story sat on the edge of history, until suddenly they began returning to Israel, not as tourists, not as strangers, but as exiles coming home. In 2005, Israel's chief rabbi recognized them as true sons of Jacob. And with that, the ground shifted. Their ancient customs, Sabbath rest, purity laws, prayers for Zion, echoed the soul of Israel. But how could they remember what the world forgot? Could this be more than coincidence? Could it be prophecy unfolding before our eyes? Stay tuned. What you're about to hear might change the way you see the Bible and the end times forever. Who are the Bnei Menashe? To understand the mystery, we must begin not in Jerusalem, but in the hills of northeastern India, in regions many have never heard of, Manipur and Mizoram. Nestled between Myanmar and Bangladesh, these areas are home to a group of people who have lived with a deep, quietly burning conviction. They are Israelites. They are the Bnei Menashe. Their oral tradition is clear and consistent. They descend from Manasseh, the firstborn son of Joseph, who was one of the 12 patriarchs of Israel. Manasseh's name in Hebrew means, "God has made me forget," but his descendants never forgot who they were. For centuries, this identity was preserved, not in scrolls, but in memory, in stories, in rituals, in longing. During the British colonial era, in the 19th century, many from these tribes were exposed to Christianity, and large-scale conversions followed. But unlike typical conversions, something unique happened. They retained their distinctly Israelite customs. They celebrated Passover, not as a Christianized holiday, but as a sacred remembrance of the Exodus. They honored the one true God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, not in abstract theology, but with the language of covenant. They practiced ritual purity, circumcision, and dietary restrictions eerily reminiscent of the Torah, even when they couldn't read Hebrew or access the scriptures. How could a people isolated from the Middle East retain such practices across centuries and continents? Anthropologists, geneticists, and theologians have debated their claims. Some say it is cultural coincidence. Others believe the signs are too numerous to ignore. And then there is the name they chose, Bnei Menashe. Not a tribal label given by outsiders, but a declaration from within. We are the sons of Manasseh. We are the remnants of a story the world forgot. The long eastward journey. It begins in 722 BCE. The Assyrian Empire, fierce and unrelenting, conquers the northern kingdom of Israel. The 10 northern tribes, including Manasseh, are exiled, their homeland stripped from them, their temple access severed, their language and customs threatened by assimilation. And yet, not all was lost. Unlike the southern kingdom of Judah, whose exiles would eventually return, the 10 northern tribes were scattered and, according to many historians, lost to time. But prophecy never used the word lost. It used the word scattered. There's a difference. One implies disappearance, the other, dispersion with purpose. The Bnei Menashe trace their ancestral journey through the corridors of history. First into Persia, where remnants of Jewish communities still exist to this day. Then into Afghanistan, where isolated Pashtun tribes also claim Israelite lineage. Through the high passes of the Himalayas, along the Silk Road, into regions of Tibet and southwestern China. There, in the dense mountainous regions of China, lies Xinlung, a cave that holds spiritual significance to their story, a place believed to be a temporary refuge. Eventually, the people we now call the B'nai Menashe settled in the remote forests of northeast India, far from Israel, far from the temple, but close to something within, the memory of a homeland. For centuries, they were cut off from global Judaism. They had no Torah scrolls, no Hebrew language, no knowledge of rabbinic tradition, and yet they remembered. They remembered not in perfect form, but in sacred fragments, a calendar of Passover, a law of purity, a yearning for Zion. These fragments were carried like seeds across continents and time. Prophetic awakening and recognition. The 20th century brought winds of change. For the first time, B'nai Menashe communities gained access to Bibles translated into their native languages. As they read the words of Moses, of the prophets, and of the covenant, something stirred deep within. "This is us," they said. "These are our fathers. These are our laws. This is our home." It wasn't academic curiosity, it was ancestral recognition. In 1951, a respected tribal leader had a dream, a vision of a land he'd never seen, flowing with milk and honey, shining under the same stars that once watched over Abraham. He awoke with clarity. Israel is our home. This wasn't a political statement. It was a prophetic call. And then the unthinkable happened. After years of community efforts, advocacy, and spiritual preparation, Rabbi Shlomo Amar, the chief rabbi of Israel, formally declared in 2005 that the B'nai Menashe are indeed descendants of Israel. The declaration sent shockwaves through religious and political circles. It opened doors, but also challenges. The return to Israel required more than a plane ticket. It required formal study, immersion into Jewish life, and a conversion process, not to overwrite their identity, but to realign it with halakhic tradition. Modern Aliyah, return to the Promised Land. They are fulfilling a promise, not only the promise made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but a promise made deep within their own hearts, that one day they would walk again in the land of their ancestors. In Hebrew, the return to Israel is called Aliyah, a word that means ascent. It's not simply migration, it is a spiritual rising, a return from exile, a rejoining of scattered roots to the soil of divine promise. Over the last 2 decades, thousands of B'nai Menashe have made Aliyah, their journeys organized with the help of Israeli NGOs and rabbinical authorities. Some arrived with song, others with tears, all with hope. Take the story of Sarah Manish, a 78-year-old matriarch who made the long journey to Israel to be reunited with her daughter. Behind her, she left 5 children in India, still waiting. Her face was lined with years of longing, her eyes filled with both joy and sorrow. She left behind her home, her language, her comfort zone, because she believed she was returning home, not leaving it. But their journey, like the Exodus of old, is not without hardship. New immigrants face culture shock in a country that, though their homeland, feels foreign. They confront language barriers, struggling to learn Hebrew after years of speaking Mizo or Manipuri. They endure social alienation and, at times, even discrimination from those who question their identity or see them as outsiders. Yet the B'nai Menashe remain steadfast. They learn, they pray, They serve in the Israeli army. They build new lives brick by brick, belief by belief. And still, the story is not complete. Roughly 6,500 B'nai Menashe remain in India, waiting, hoping, preparing. They gather daily to recite ancient prayers for return to Zion. They light candles. They observe the Sabbath. They teach their children that one day they too will walk in Jerusalem. Crisis in India. An urgent call. In the spring of 2023, a storm broke out, not just in the skies, but on the ground in Manipur, northeast India. Violent ethnic conflict erupted between communities. What began as political unrest quickly spiraled into brutal attacks and bloodshed. And in the chaos, the B'nai Menashe found themselves in grave peril. They were not fighters. They were families, students, elders, but they were targeted nonetheless. Synagogues were burned. Homes were looted. Sacred Torah scrolls, some hundreds of years old, were set ablaze. Lives were lost. For a people whose entire identity is rooted in preservation, of faith, of memory, of covenant, this was a devastating blow. The world remained largely unaware, but those watching closely knew this was more than a humanitarian crisis. It was a prophetic urgency. Israeli organizations like Shavei Israel sounded the alarm. Prominent rabbis and lawmakers called for immediate action to evacuate and protect the remaining B'nai Menashe. Even the Israeli Knesset took notice, urging expedited procedures to bring the rest of the community home. Because every day spent in danger was another day the thread of prophecy risked being severed. And yet, many remained. Not because they wished to, but because red tape and bureaucracy stood in the way of destiny. So they wait, in refugee camps, in temporary shelters, with faith burning amid the ashes. One rabbi remarked, "When Torah scrolls are burned, it is not just paper that is lost, it is covenant. We cannot let that fire consume a people who have preserved that covenant for over 2,000 years." Manasseh in Scripture. A tribe with prophetic significance. To many, the name Manasseh may seem obscure, but within the pages of the Torah and the books of Kings, the story of Manasseh unfolds with surprising depth. Manasseh was the firstborn son of Joseph, born in Egypt during Israel's exile in a foreign land. His name, given by Joseph, means, "God has made me forget my hardship," a name laced with both pain and healing. But something extraordinary happens in Genesis 48. Joseph brings his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, to his dying father, Jacob, seeking a blessing. Instead of blessing Joseph's sons as grandchildren, Jacob adopts them as his own sons, placing them among the 12 tribes of Israel. He even reverses the birth order, giving the greater blessing to Ephraim, the younger. Yet Manasseh was never forgotten. In the land of Canaan, the tribe of Manasseh received a double inheritance, with territory both west and east of the Jordan River, stretching across vast and fertile lands. They were warriors, builders, keepers of tradition. But when the northern kingdom fell to the Assyrians, Manasseh was among the tribes carried into exile. From then on, silence. For centuries, the fate of Manasseh was unknown, but silence in Scripture is never the end. It is a pause, a sacred breath before the next chapter. And in the prophets, that next chapter is hinted at again and again. Because the story of Manasseh is more than ancient geography, it is a living metaphor of exile and return, of being forgotten by the world, but never by God. A sign of the end times? When the Apostle Paul wrote his letter to the Romans, he spoke of a mystery, one that stretches like a golden thread through all of redemption history. Romans 11:25-26. a partial hardening has come upon Israel, until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. And in this way, all Israel will be saved. This is no simple theological point. It's a cosmic timetable. Paul describes two movements. First, the calling of the nations. Then, the awakening of Israel. Could it be that the B'nai Menashe are part of this awakening? They were scattered before the time of Christ, forgotten before the Gospels were written. Yet today, their story resurfaces as Israel is reborn, as Jerusalem becomes a global focal point, as ancient promises come alive again. Their return is not just historical, it is theological. It weaves together themes of redemption, identity, and divine precision. Global echoes, other lost tribes. Returning, the B'nai Menashe are not the only ones. Across the earth, from distant lands and forgotten villages, people are rising with similar claims: "We are Israel. We have returned." From Ethiopia, the Beta Israel, also known as the Ethiopian Jews, carried oral Torah, practiced circumcision, and preserved Jewish customs for centuries. Today, tens of thousands live in Israel. In Nigeria, the Igbo people maintain striking Israelite traditions, observing dietary laws, Sabbath rest, and tracing their lineage to tribes like Gad and Ephraim. In China, the ancient Kaifeng Jews once flourished under imperial protection, their synagogues standing tall for centuries before fading into obscurity. Even in Afghanistan and Latin America, crypto-Jewish communities are emerging, descendants of exiles, refugees, and conversos, rediscovering who they are. It is as if the wind of God is moving over dry bones, calling out identities long buried beneath empire, persecution, and forgetfulness. This is not just individual revival. It is a global regathering, a puzzle of prophecy coming together piece by piece. "I will whistle for them and gather them in," says Zechariah 10:8. "For I have redeemed them, and they shall be as numerous as they were before." God is not just saving souls, He is restoring tribes. The story of the B'nai Menashe is not just history. It is a mirror, a reminder, a divine message hidden in plain sight. If God remembers Manasseh after 2,700 years, if He reaches across continents, cultures, and centuries to bring back a scattered people, then He remembers you. His promises do not expire. His covenants do not fade. What He spoke, He will fulfill. This story reminds us that no one is too far, no exile too deep, no identity too shattered. And it leads us to the most profound question of all. Are we witnessing the countdown to the full restoration of Israel? Are the pieces aligning, not just politically, but prophetically? Are we watching the curtain rise on the final act of redemptive history? Because if Israel is awakening, if the tribes are returning, then the king is not far behind. The return of Manasseh is not the end of the story. It may be the beginning of the final chapter.
According to Jewish tradition, the Messiah will enter Jerusalem through this gate.
There's a gate in Jerusalem, sealed in silence for nearly 500 years. But something is changing. Some say it's just stone and legend. Others believe it's the most sacred threshold on earth. A gateway, not just to a city, but to a prophecy. Why did a powerful sultan order it sealed with stone and cement? Why has no one been allowed to dig near it since? And why, in recent years, have whispers of strange sounds, movements, and unexplained tremors begun to surface? What if the gate that no one dares to open is the very one the Messiah will walk through? In this video, we'll uncover the secrets of the Eastern Gate, its buried past, its prophetic future, and the signs that suggest it may not stay shut much longer. So stay with us to the end, because what we're about to uncover may shake the way you see the world, the Bible, and your place in history. Let's begin. The Gate of Prophecy, the Golden Gate. There is a gate, sealed in silence, yet roaring with mystery. To the untrained eye, it may appear as little more than aged stone, weathered by centuries, partially buried by time. But to those who understand prophecy, this gate is a declaration, a boundary between what has been and what must be. This is the Eastern Gate, also known as the Golden Gate, standing along the eastern wall of Jerusalem's Old City. It faces directly toward the Mount of Olives, a place steeped in messianic expectation. The alignment is no accident. It's sacred geography. From the Mount of Olives across the Kidron Valley, one's gaze meets this very gate, and beyond it, the Temple Mount, where the first and second temples once stood. This axis forms a divine corridor through which, according to Jewish and Christian tradition, the Messiah will one day enter Jerusalem in glory. This belief isn't rooted in speculation. It is grounded in Scripture. The prophet Ezekiel, in a vision given to him during the Babylonian exile, records this striking declaration: "This gate is to remain shut. It must not be opened. No one may enter through it. It is to remain shut because the Lord, the God of Israel, has entered through it." Ezekiel 44:2. It's a hauntingly beautiful image, a gate closed, not by neglect or by force, but by the very presence of God. A gate sanctified because it has been touched by the divine. Ancient Jewish commentators, including those from the Talmudic period, saw this gate as a place reserved for the presence of the Shekinah, the visible glory of God. In Christian tradition, this is the same gate that Jesus of Nazareth entered during his triumphal arrival in Jerusalem, riding humbly on a donkey, as prophesied by Zechariah. So the gate becomes more than architecture. It becomes a testimony in stone, a silent guardian of prophecy, a threshold that once opened to divine humility and now awaits divine majesty. And yet, it is sealed. Why? To understand that, we must go back nearly 500 years, to a sultan who thought he could outmaneuver heaven. A sultan's fear. Sealing what God declared shut in the year 1541, as the Ottoman Empire reigned over Jerusalem, Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent stood as one of the most powerful men on earth. His empire stretched from Eastern Europe through the Middle East and into North Africa. His architects and engineers were reshaping Jerusalem's walls and gates, much of which still define the city today. And yet, despite his worldly power, something stirred fear in Suleiman's heart. A prophecy. Legends among local Jews, and echoed in Islamic eschatology, foretold the coming of a Jewish Messiah, a kingly redeemer who would enter Jerusalem through the Eastern Gate. Suleiman, though a Muslim, respected and feared these prophecies. He knew that if such a figure were to arrive, this gate would be the place of entry. So he made a bold decision. He ordered the Eastern Gate to be sealed shut, with massive stones and cement, completely blocking the passage. But Suleiman didn't stop there. In an even more symbolic move, he established a Muslim cemetery just outside the gate. Why? Because, according to Levitical law, Jewish priests, who must maintain ritual purity, are forbidden from walking over graves. By placing a cemetery in front of the gate, Suleiman intended to disqualify any priestly Messiah from approaching. It was, in his eyes, a clever solution. Block the prophecy. Eliminate the threat. Seal history. But in doing so, he fulfilled it. Ezekiel had said, "This gate shall remain shut, because the Lord has entered through it." Suleiman sealed it, not knowing that his political fear would become prophetic confirmation. In trying to prevent the Messiah's entry, he only reinforced the spiritual significance of the gate's closure. Some Jewish scholars and rabbis saw this not as a defeat, but as a divine orchestration. The Talmud teaches that even the actions of kings serve the will of heaven, whether they know it or not. And so, the Eastern Gate stands sealed to this day, just as Ezekiel foresaw, bearing the weight of both divine history and human fear. But the story does not end with sealed stone, because beneath that very gate lies a secret, one that was unearthed by accident and changed everything. Two gates, one story. Jesus has already entered. It was the spring of 1969. A young archaeologist named Dr. James Fleming was surveying the area near the Eastern Gate. After days of rain, the ground had become soft and unstable. What he found was astonishing. The remains of an ancient gate directly beneath the current, sealed one. Same alignment, same direction, but older, much older. This discovery led many archaeologists and biblical scholars to believe that the original Eastern Gate from the Second Temple period lay buried beneath the present-day gate, the very gate through which Jesus would have entered Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. This aligns with Zechariah 9:9, written nearly 500 years before the event. "Rejoice greatly, daughter of Zion. Shout, daughter of Jerusalem. See, your king comes to you, righteous and victorious, lowly and riding on a donkey." The connection is breathtaking. Two gates, one atop the other, two comings separated by centuries. The lower gate, used during the first coming of Jesus, when he entered in peace. The upper gate, sealed and waiting for the second coming, when he will enter in power. This duality isn't random. It reflects a pattern we see again and again in the biblical narrative. The first appearance is humble, veiled, almost hidden, while the second is triumphant, undeniable, and final. It also confirms something deeper. God's timeline is not chaotic. It is layered, intentional, woven into geography and architecture. His purposes are not just written in Scripture, but etched into the very landscape of Jerusalem. Scholars continue to debate whether the lower gate dates exactly to the time of Herod's temple, but even secular archaeologists agree. It predates the Ottoman era and likely stood during the Second Temple period. That alone connects it firmly to the time of Jesus. And so, we are left with this paradox. The gate has been entered, and yet not. The prophecy has been fulfilled, and yet waits to be completed. What kind of story does that? Only one written by a mind not bound by time. And if that's true, then we may be standing not at the end, but in the middle of something sacred. The prophetic geography. All paths lead east. In Jerusalem, geography is never just geography. Every stone, every slope, every shadow holds echoes of eternity. The Eastern Gate does not stand alone. It is part of a larger divine axis, an ancient alignment of prophetic landmarks that stretches across time and terrain. To the east, rising above the city, looms the Mount of Olives, a place of prayer, prophecy, and parting. According to Zechariah 14:4, this mountain will be split in two at the return of the Lord. On that day his feet shall stand on the Mount of Olives, and the mount shall be split from east to west. This is not metaphor. This is a topographical event, yet to occur, prophesied with such clarity that it forms a geographical spine through the city's sacred core. Between the Mount of Olives and the Temple Mount lies the Kidron Valley, and directly across that valley stands the Eastern Gate, sealed and waiting. This alignment, Mount of Olives, Eastern Gate, Temple Mount, forms the prophetic corridor through which the Messiah is expected to return. And it's not just one verse, it's a tapestry. In Matthew 24:27, Jesus tells his disciples, "As lightning comes from the east and shines to the west, so will the coming of the Son of Man be." In Acts 1:11, as he ascended from the Mount of Olives, angels declared, "This same Jesus will come back in the same way you have seen him go." And again, in Ezekiel 43:1-2, the prophet sees a vision of divine return. "Then the man brought me to the gate facing east, and I saw the glory of the God of Israel coming from the east." This is not architectural coincidence, it is divine design. From the first temple to the final trumpet, the east is the direction of arrival, glory, and judgment. In rabbinic tradition, the east holds eschatological weight. Many ancient Jewish tombs are oriented eastward, facing the Mount of Olives, in hope of rising at the coming of the Messiah. The eastern gate, then, is the threshold, not just between east and west, but between the temporal and the eternal. A city built on prophecy, a gate sealed by fear, a king destined to return the same way he left. This is not myth, it is mapped reality, waiting for fulfillment. And as we trace this path eastward, we also trace a story of resistance, of rejection, and of sovereignty, stronger than any human hand. Attempts to stop the Messiah. A pattern in history. Throughout history, mankind has tried to stop what it cannot control. And at the center of that resistance stands one figure, the Messiah. From the very beginning, attempts to halt God's plan have only advanced it. Herod the Great, obsessed with power, ordered the slaughter of infants in Bethlehem to prevent the rise of a rival king. And yet, in doing so, he fulfilled Jeremiah's prophecy of weeping in Ramah. The Pharisees and religious elite, clinging to tradition and control, rejected Jesus and plotted his death, unwittingly fulfilling Isaiah 53. He was despised and rejected by men. Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor, washed his hands of the matter, condemning an innocent man to die, but thereby delivering the lamb to the altar. In every case, human schemes clashed with divine promises and lost. And now, centuries later, the Eastern Gate remains sealed, a stone metaphor for man's ongoing attempt to halt the inevitable. But here's the irony. Every attempt to stop the Messiah has only proven his identity. Even the sealing of the gate, a direct attempt to thwart prophecy, has become a signpost confirming its truth. It stands not as a triumph of human defiance, but as a silent monument to God's sovereignty. This pattern runs deep. Humanity resists. God prevails, again and again. The gate's silence is not emptiness. It is pregnant with meaning. It is the pause before the crescendo, the curtain drawn tight before the stage erupts with light. And perhaps that curtain is beginning to tremble. When history meets the supernatural. Strange signs emerging in recent years, something strange has begun to happen near the Eastern Gate. Locals whisper about sounds, deep, unearthly rumbles, emerging from the ground. Some claim to have felt vibrations beneath their feet, as though something ancient were stirring below. To some, these are hoaxes, fabricated tales. To others, they are harbingers, signs that the seal is weakening, that history is on the brink of revelation. In 2015, an Israeli archaeologist publicly questioned why excavation near the Eastern Gate is strictly forbidden, even in an era of intensive exploration across Jerusalem. What lies beneath? What are authorities afraid to discover? And why, in a city that never stops building, is this one place, this one gate, off limits? Speculation grows. So do the questions. Are these events natural or supernatural? Is the shaking of stones a geological anomaly, or the echo of prophecy beginning to stir? Even secular scholars admit there is no logical reason the gate should be sealed today. No military function, no urban purpose. And yet, it remains closed, untouched, like a tomb awaiting resurrection. Perhaps the silence is beginning to break. Perhaps the sealed gate is not just holding back people, but holding back time. And as the world grows more unstable, the stones grow restless, because the one who entered once in peace is coming again in glory, and nothing sealed by man can keep out the King. Are we closer than we think? Sometimes, prophecy is not fulfilled in a flash of lightning. Sometimes, it unfolds quietly, like the rising of a morning mist, so subtle that you only realize its weight when you finally look back. In 1969, a forgotten gate was found beneath the sealed eastern gate of Jerusalem. It was a moment few understood at the time. Yet now, decades later, its significance looms larger with every passing year. That buried gate, the one believed to have been used during the time of Jesus, is not just a relic of the past. Its rediscovery seems timed, almost as if history was waiting until our generation, this very moment, to bring it to light. Can we really believe that such timing is a coincidence? Or is it something more? The book of Revelation 3:20 gives us an image. One not of a gate in a city wall, but of a door far more personal. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in. For centuries, theologians have noted the shift in tone here. Jesus is no longer depicted as a king coming with armies or judgment. He is portrayed as a guest, standing gently at the entrance of the human heart, waiting to be welcomed. This is the profound shift from geography to intimacy. Perhaps the more urgent gate is not the one sealed in Jerusalem, but the one in your soul. Because it's not only about whether we will witness the Messiah return through the Golden Gate, it's about whether he has already entered the sanctuary of your life. The prophet Ezekiel once saw the glory of the Lord departing the temple, moving eastward, a heartbreaking vision of separation between God and his people. But in another vision, later in the same book, he sees the glory returning from the east. Then the man brought me to the gate facing east, and I saw the glory of the God of Israel coming from the east, and the glory of the Lord entered the temple. Ezekiel 43, 1-4, it left once, but it comes again. And now we must ask, will we be the generation to see it return? If so, what kind of people should we be? Distracted, divided, disconnected, or watchful, discerning, with our hearts unsealed, waiting not only for a moment in history, but for a personal encounter with the King? The final alignment: gate, glory, and the return of the King. As we look toward the Eastern Gate, we're not simply looking at limestone or historical architecture. We are staring at a threshold, one that sits at the convergence of geography, prophecy, and eternity. In Ezekiel 46:12, the prophet writes, "The gate facing east shall be opened for the prince." This is no ordinary prince. Jewish scholars refer to this figure as the Nasi, the royal leader who comes in the Messianic age. Christian scholars, too, see in this verse a reference to Jesus, the long-expected King who will reign in righteousness. The Eastern Gate will open again, not by human decree, but by divine design. And that moment will not be isolated. It is the culmination of what Revelation 20 foretells: the millennial reign, a 1,000-year period of peace and justice under the rule of Christ, the Prince of Peace. Blessed and holy is the one who shares in the first resurrection. They will be priests of God and of Christ, and will reign with him for 1,000 years. Revelation 26. This is not poetic imagery. It's a literal return to the place from which he ascended. Acts 1:11 makes it clear. This same Jesus, who has been taken from you into heaven, will come back in the same way you have seen him go. And where did he ascend? From the Mount of Olives, facing the eastern gate. This is why scholars and believers alike keep returning to this ancient gate. It is not only a remnant of Jerusalem's history, it is the keystone of its future. We are not waiting for myth. We are living inside a countdown, one measured not in minutes, but in fulfilled promises. And the final alignment is already forming. The gate, the glory, the return. Now we come to the most important question, not historical, but eternal. Which side of the gate are you on? But there is a gate even more sacred than the one in Jerusalem, the gate of the human heart. Psalm 24 says it like a song echoing through the ages. Lift up your heads, O you gates. Be lifted up, you ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. This is an invitation, not to a city, but to you. Right now, in this moment, the same Jesus who once wept over Jerusalem stands at your door. He doesn't force his way in. He knocks. He waits. And he asks one thing. Will you open? We can marvel at archaeology, study prophecy, and trace the unfolding events of history. But none of that will matter if our hearts remain sealed. You can resist. You can build your walls, but you will never outrun the love of the King. And when he returns, the only thing that will matter is not whether you knew the prophecy, but whether you were ready for the King. So here is the decision. Is your heart sealed in stone or open to glory? If this message spoke to you, if something stirred in your spirit as you listened, write in the comments right now. The doors of my heart are open to the King of glory. Let this be your moment. Let this be your voice added to the chorus of those preparing the way. Share this video. Subscribe to the channel. Because the gate may open sooner than we think. And when it does, you'll want to be on the right side of history. Maybe you missed this news? Something extraordinary is unfolding on the Temple Mount, and it's sparking conversations that go beyond history or politics. It's touching on the realm of prophecy. At first glance, it might not seem like much, but what's truly captivating isn't just what's happening, but what isn't happening. And that's where things get really intriguing. For centuries, the Temple Mount has been a focal point of conflict and reverence, and now, subtle yet profound changes are taking place. These developments raise a question that's as old as the site itself. Could this be setting the stage for the fulfillment of biblical prophecy? According to Scripture, the rebuilding of a Jewish temple here is key to end-times events, a concept that seems impossible with the iconic Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque dominating the skyline. Yet, the signs emerging today might just offer a glimpse of what's to come. There's been plenty of controversy surrounding the structures on the Temple Mount, and it's not hard to see why. For those who follow Bible prophecy, this site carries immense significance. And here's an unexpected twist. If you're Muslim and familiar with these prophecies, it might stir more concern than you'd think. Oddly enough, there's a strong argument that some Muslims take Bible prophecy more seriously than many Christians. It's a striking claim, but there are reasons to believe it, which we'll unpack shortly. Now, onto a key development that's making waves. An article titled, "Full Dress Kohen Sighted on Temple Mount." This isn't just an attention-grabbing headline. It signals something much bigger. What's happening is significant, but what isn't happening might be even more remarkable. The article kicks off with a mention of the Temple Institute. Anytime you hear that name, it's worth paying attention. This organization is laser-focused on the re-establishment of the temple on the Temple Mount. Over the past 30 years, their progress has been astonishing, surpassing expectations. They've not only planned, but actively prepared the necessary instruments for the temple's construction, following biblical instructions down to the finest detail. A critical piece of the puzzle involves the red heifers, which are integral to the temple's dedication ceremony. The Temple Institute has been meticulously preparing for this, underscoring their determination to see the temple rebuilt. Their work, however, has not been without its share of controversy, particularly in recent years, as they've asserted their right to be present on the Temple Mount. The latest development is unprecedented. For the first time in 2,000 years, a Kohen, a male descendant of Aaron, the high priest, ascended the Temple Mount in full biblically prescribed Kohanic garments. While there, he joined a prayer quorum and delivered the priestly blessing to those gathered. This moment is nothing short of groundbreaking. In the past, such an event would have been unthinkable, potentially sparking regional conflict. Yet here it is, unfolding in real time, with a surreal sense of calm around it. It's a testament to how much is shifting, and how much attention this historic site continues to command. The Temple Institute recently shared a striking post on Facebook, another first on the Temple Mount. It highlights a historic event where a modern-day descendant of Aaron, Moses' brother and the first high priest, ascended the Temple Mount, wearing kosher priestly garments crafted by the Temple Institute. While there, he performed the priestly blessing alongside his fellow priests, referencing the blessing found in Numbers 6. This milestone marks a significant moment for Jewish worship at the site. What's truly remarkable isn't just the event itself, but the absence of resistance to it. Historically, such acts would have been met with strong opposition, but this time, prayers were offered freely. Groups of Jews prayed in quorums of 10, a monumental change considering past restrictions. On Rosh Hashanah, ritual ram's horns, or shofarot, were smuggled onto the Temple Mount, and despite attempts by police to intervene, they were blown as part of the holiday observance. Other recent actions include Jewish worshippers prostrating themselves on the temple's stones and wearing tefillin, phylacteries, at the site, despite long-standing tensions. The Temple Institute has been preparing for these moments, crafting garments and instruments for the anticipated restoration of temple services. Their efforts face ongoing challenges, including legal and political hurdles. Although there is no law against Jewish prayer on the Temple Mount, and the Supreme Court has ruled in favor of it, prayer has often been conducted discreetly due to opposition. Yet, on a recent Tuesday, open prayer became a reality. This shift comes amid international criticism. In August, the Biden administration issued a statement condemning Jewish prayer at the site, reflecting broader geopolitical tensions. However, these developments, while controversial, are seen by some as signs of prophetic fulfillment. As efforts to rebuild the temple advance, it's worth noting the theological implications. Many believe this temple will play a central role in end-times prophecy, referred to as the Antichrist Temple. While this is a sobering thought for some, it's also viewed as a sign that the prophetic timeline is accelerating. For those paying attention, these events are a powerful reminder of the rapid changes taking place and their potential significance in the context of biblical prophecy. The Bible makes it clear that the temple is central to end-times prophecy. Daniel 9:27 offers a striking vision of what's to come. "And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate." This passage points to a chilling moment during the 7-year tribulation, commonly referred to as the 70th week of Daniel, when the Antichrist will break a covenant, halt temple sacrifices, and demand worship, desecrating the temple in the process. This isn't an isolated mention. Revelation 13 describes the Antichrist's rise to power and the enforcement of worship, while Matthew 24 recounts Jesus' warning about the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place. The implications are immense. For these events to occur, there must be a physical Jewish temple on the Temple Mount, currently occupied by the Dome of the Rock. This is no small detail, it's an extraordinary hurdle. The construction of a temple at this sacred and politically sensitive site would require a seismic shift in global dynamics. Yet, the Bible is unambiguous. The temple will be rebuilt. What's fascinating is how the groundwork seems to be quietly falling into place. Organizations like the Temple Institute have been preparing for years, crafting garments, instruments, and even planning rituals for a future temple. But the changes aren't just about physical preparations, they're also about access. Not long ago, Jews were completely restricted from the Temple Mount. Even Christians faced harsh limitations. Silent prayer was forbidden, and anyone caught moving their lips while gazing in a particular direction risked immediate arrest. Yet today, things are different. Jews are ascending the Temple Mount, praying openly, and even conducting blessings in full priestly garments. These developments would have been unthinkable just a few decades ago. And while these events might seem subtle, they carry profound prophetic weight. The fact that such actions are occurring with minimal resistance is astonishing, given the historical tension surrounding this sacred site. But this isn't just a political or cultural shift. It's a spiritual one. The Bible suggests that these incremental changes are paving the way for the fulfillment of prophecy. And while the prospect of a rebuilt temple is thrilling for some, it comes with a sobering reality. This will be the Antichrist's temple. It will mark a dark chapter in human history, a time of unparalleled tribulation. Historically, any move by Jews to assert their presence on the Temple Mount, let alone perform religious acts, has been the spark for major unrest. The Temple Mount has long been a flashpoint, with past conflicts between Hamas and Israel often tied to events at this sacred site. That's why the recent developments are nothing short of astonishing. During a significant Jewish holiday, priests ascended the Temple Mount, prayed openly, and delivered the priestly blessing in full ceremonial attire. And yet, the usual uproar? It didn't happen. No mass protests, no violent clashes. It was as if the world collectively decided to let it slide. This is groundbreaking. Historically, such actions could have incited not just protests, but large-scale violence. The absence of resistance is perhaps even more remarkable than the act itself. This shift hints at something deeper. As the objections diminish, it's becoming easier to envision an arrangement, or even an agreement, that would allow the construction of the Third Temple. The Bible has long prophesied this, and watching the groundwork being laid feels almost surreal. We are witnessing a steady erosion of barriers that once seemed insurmountable. Think about the gravity of the situation. For centuries, the idea of a high priest walking on the Temple Mount in full ceremonial garb, complete with the ephod, breastplate, and other sacred garments, would have been unthinkable. Such a bold display would have likely provoked immediate backlash, possibly violence. Yet today, this is happening with minimal resistance, even as Islamic symbols still dominate the site. This isn't just a shift in politics or public opinion. It feels like a profound, almost supernatural preparation. Minds and hearts seem to be softening, allowing these monumental events to unfold as foretold in Scripture. What's more, this isn't happening in isolation. The rise of conservative and far-right voices in Israel's political landscape has played a significant role in pushing for greater Jewish access and sovereignty over the Temple Mount. These factions are making bolder statements, and remarkably, they're being tolerated in ways that would have been unimaginable just a few years ago. It's as if a divine hand is orchestrating the environment needed for prophecy to advance. The implications are staggering. The rebuilding of the temple isn't just a political or religious milestone, it's a prophetic one. It marks the beginning of events that the Bible describes in chilling detail, such as the Antichrist setting himself up in the temple and demanding worship. These are not just abstract ideas, they're becoming tangible realities. And while these developments are thrilling to observe, they also come with a sobering message. For believers, the fulfillment of these prophecies is both a reassurance and a warning. The pieces are falling into place faster than ever, signaling that the world is racing toward the culmination of God's plan. What's happening now isn't just news, it's history in the making, prophecy in motion. These events should serve as a wake-up call, a reminder to stay spiritually vigilant. The Temple Mount is no longer just a site of tension. It's becoming the stage for the most significant events the world will ever witness. And we're seeing it all come together, one remarkable development at a time. An incredible discovery near Jerusalem is rewriting what we know about the Temple Mount and its history. Just outside the city, an ancient quarry has been uncovered, and it's no ordinary sight. This quarry contains stones in various stages of preparation, specifically crafted for the Temple Mount. What makes this so significant is that it answers questions historians and engineers have debated for centuries. How these enormous stones were cut, shaped, and transported with the tools and methods of biblical times. Even more fascinating is what this means for the future. This discovery doesn't just provide historical insight, it removes practical barriers for rebuilding the temple. The techniques and processes used thousands of years ago can now be replicated with precision. It's as if this quarry has been preserved for such a time as this, a blueprint ready and waiting for the next chapter in the story of the temple. But this is happening in a world that's far from welcoming to such developments. The political landscape is tense, with objections from the Biden administration, Islamic nations, and others who claim authority over the Temple Mount. Yet, despite these forces, progress is happening. And if you know the Bible, none of this comes as a surprise. Scripture has been clear. God promised to bring His people back to Israel, and we've seen it happen. He foretold that the nations would turn against Israel, as written in Zechariah 12:3, and we're watching that prophecy unfold in real time. What's astonishing isn't just that these things are happening, it's how quickly they're happening. The pace feels almost dizzying. For centuries, believers have anticipated these events, but to see them come together so rapidly is both thrilling and sobering. It's like watching pieces of a puzzle snap into place, forming a picture you've always known was coming, but never imagined would take shape in your lifetime. And here's where it gets even more profound. This isn't just about geopolitics or archaeology, it's about God's faithfulness. Time and time again, His word has proven true. Every prophecy, every promise, has come to pass with precision. The re-establishment of Israel, the global tension surrounding the Temple Mount, and now even the logistical preparations for rebuilding the temple. It's all happening exactly as foretold. God's track record is perfect. He has never failed, never exaggerated, never lied. Every promise has been fulfilled, and that should give us an unshakable confidence in what He says about the future. This discovery is a reminder that God's plan is not only unfolding, it's accelerating. If His word has been true about everything so far, it's also true about the hope He offers. This isn't just a story of stones and politics, It's a story of redemption and eternity. The same God who orchestrated the return of his people to Israel has promised eternal life to those who trust in him. And that's where this story becomes personal. The Bible isn't just a book of history or prophecy, it's a message of hope. It's a reminder that God is in control, even in the midst of chaos. It's an invitation to be part of a story much bigger than ourselves. And the way to do that is simple. Put your faith in Jesus Christ. Ask for forgiveness. Trust him with your life. And know that the same God who has been faithful throughout history will be faithful to you. This discovery, this moment, is more than a historical milestone. It's a signpost pointing to what's ahead, a future God has promised, one that's unfolding before our eyes. And while the world may seem to spin faster and faster, there's peace in knowing that every step is part of a divine plan. This isn't just history being made, it's prophecy being fulfilled. And that changes everything. Salvation is not something that can be earned through human effort or good works. It's a gift freely offered by God because of what Jesus accomplished on the cross. The price has already been paid, and the invitation is clear: to receive this gift by putting faith and trust in him. There's no better time than now to say, "Jesus, come into my heart. I trust you because your word is true. You did the work of salvation for me, and I accept this perfect gift." The urgency of this moment cannot be overstated. Signs of the times are all around us. Wars and rumors of wars dominate headlines. The Middle East is erupting into chaos. Political upheaval and societal confusion are at unprecedented levels. The world feels like it's teetering on the edge, with events accelerating at a pace that's difficult to comprehend. We're witnessing a cultural and moral unraveling. Boys claiming to be girls, girls claiming to be boys, children turning against parents, and parents abandoning the sanctity of life. The darkness we see isn't random. It's exactly what Scripture said would happen. But amidst the chaos, God promises that his light will shine brightest when the world is at its darkest. Now, more than ever, is the time to turn to him. The Bible's prophecies are unfolding with stunning accuracy. The rebuilding of the temple is becoming more plausible by the day. While many believe believers will be taken before these events fully materialize, the fact remains: the signs are here, and they are undeniable. Revelation speaks to this moment. The warnings in chapters 6, 13, and beyond describe the events that are starting to unfold in real time. What once seemed far off now feels imminent, and the frequency of these developments is remarkable. Not long ago, a story about the Temple Mount would surface once or twice a year. Now, they're coming at us almost hourly. The pace of change is a powerful reminder that God's plan is moving forward. This is not a time for fear, but for faith. God's sovereignty is unshaken, and his promises remain steadfast. Trust him. Follow him. Watch him work in ways that only he can. The signs of the times are not just warnings, they are an invitation to draw closer to him, to embrace his truth, and to prepare for what lies ahead. Jesus is coming soon. This is not just a statement of hope, but a certainty rooted in the unchanging Word of God. The world is changing rapidly, but God's faithfulness remains constant. Trust in him, follow his lead, and be ready to witness his incredible work in the days to come. God bless you, and never forget, his return is nearer than ever.
After years of waiting, a perfect red heifer has finally been selected. A perfect heifer without a single blemish.
For the first time in nearly 2,000 years, a perfect red heifer has been found. Free of blemish, never yoked, watched with reverence. To most, it may seem simple, but to those who understand the ancient prophecies, this changes everything. Because according to the Torah, without the ashes of a red heifer, the temple cannot return. And now, that possibility is real. So if the ritual of purification is about to begin, what sacred door is about to open? You might be surprised to learn that everything about rebuilding the ancient temple in Jerusalem comes down to one animal. Not a lion, not a lamb, but a young reddish-brown cow. The Bible in Numbers 19 lays it out clearly. A red heifer, perfect and untouched, is to be burned outside the camp. Its ashes, mixed with water, are then used to purify people who've been in contact with death. And that purification? It's not optional. Without it, no one, not even the priests, can enter the temple, let alone perform any of the rituals. This isn't just some ancient tradition. This is the foundation, a requirement that sits at the very start of everything sacred that followed. And here's why it matters now. Without purification, nothing else can happen. No sacrifices, no services, no restoration of what once stood on that mountain. In Jewish tradition, the red heifer is so rare, so essential, that the rabbis say only 9 have ever been offered since the time of Moses. The 10th, they believe, will be prepared in the days of the Messiah. Whether you see that as prophecy or preparation, the implications are enormous. Because today, in our time, red heifers that meet the strict biblical standards have been identified in Israel, raised in secret, watched carefully, protected from blemish or burden. It's easy to dismiss it as religious curiosity until you realize what's really at stake. This isn't just about a cow. This is about restarting a spiritual clock that's been paused for 2,000 years. And once that clock starts ticking again, it signals something much bigger, something unfolding right before our eyes. But purification is just step 1. After that, come the builders. In the quiet hills of Samaria, in a place called Eli, you can hear the sound of hammers on stone. They're preparing stones meant for something sacred, measured, cut, set aside, for the future altar of the third temple. This is real. It's happening now. And some of the people leading it aren't just craftsmen or rabbis, they're political leaders. One of the most recognizable names is Moshe Feiglin, a former member of Israel's parliament who has long advocated for Jewish prayer rights on the Temple Mount. He's not the only one. Others are joining him: religious nationalists, priests in training, community leaders, each bringing tools and influence to the same table. And what they're doing publicly, boldly. As one of them put it, "We're not waiting anymore. We're acting." That sentence says everything. For decades, discussions about rebuilding the temple lived on the edges of public life. Now, they've moved to the center, where faith and politics are starting to intertwine. It raises big questions. What happens when belief stops being just private devotion and starts shaping real-world decisions? What does it mean when politicians and priests start building together? Literally? Throughout Jewish history, the temple has been more than just a building. It's been a symbol of unity, sovereignty, divine presence. And so, laying even one stone toward that future is a massive step. Some see it as a spiritual revival, others as political tension waiting to explode. But whatever your view, one thing is clear. The stones are being prepared, not in theory, in reality. And while many around the world aren't watching yet, the foundation is already being laid. Now, the question shifts. If the stones are ready, what else is in place? For a long time, talk of the Third Temple felt more like a metaphor, something spiritual, symbolic, maybe even far off. But that's no longer the case. Walk through the Temple Institute in Jerusalem, and you'll see something remarkable. The ancient vessels of temple worship, rebuilt, not replicas, not artistic renderings, actual functioning items crafted down to the last biblical detail. There's the menorah, over 6 feet tall, made of solid gold. There are garments for the priests, stitched according to instructions given to Moses. The table of showbread, silver trumpets, incense altars, they're all there. Ready? Not imagined, ready. This isn't the work of just one group. The Sanhedrin Council, a re-established body of Torah scholars and legal experts, is involved too. They've mapped out procedures, identified qualified priests through DNA records, and conducted trial runs of temple ceremonies. And maybe most surprising of all, they have blueprints, actual architectural plans for the Third Temple, based not on guesswork, but on detailed biblical descriptions, rabbinic sources, and years of research. So now we're looking at something very real. This isn't just a dream anymore, it's a project, waiting for the right moment. Of course, there's still one enormous obstacle: the Temple Mount. It's one of the most contested pieces of land in the world, sacred not just to Jews, but to Muslims and Christians alike. Any move to build there would spark international reaction. Some fear conflict, others see fulfillment of prophecy. But regardless of the tension, the fact remains: the preparations are done. The items are made. The people are trained. The plans are in place. Which brings us to the real question. If everything is ready, what's stopping them? And perhaps more importantly, how much longer can it be stopped? Because once the spiritual and the political align, the story changes. And for those watching closely, that change may already be underway. In Israel today, the political atmosphere is shifting, and it's not just about economics or foreign policy. It's about identity. Behind closed doors and in public squares, a deep tension is rising between the country's religious and secular sectors. For decades, the State of Israel has tried to balance its modern, democratic identity with its ancient biblical roots. But that balance is starting to strain. Among Orthodox communities, the call is growing louder. It's time to bring the temple back, not just as a symbol, but as a national expression of purpose. To them, it's not merely a religious aspiration. It's a return to covenant, a return to destiny. And at the center of this pressure stands one man, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Long known as a master strategist, Netanyahu now finds himself navigating the tightrope between growing religious demands and global diplomatic pressure. He's receiving increased support from leaders in the temple movement, those advocating for Jewish access, preparation, and eventual reconstruction of the temple. These aren't just fringe voices anymore. They're rabbis with followings, lawmakers with influence, activists with momentum. Behind the scenes, meetings are happening. Drafts are being circulated, polls are shifting, and in the halls of government, the unthinkable is no longer off the table. Netanyahu, like many before him, understands the historical weight of Jerusalem. But now, that weight may demand action, not just preservation. And so, we have to ask, could politics be the final domino to fall before the temple rises? Because, as history shows us, great spiritual changes often ride in on the back of political decisions. And sometimes, one yes can change the course of the world. But this story isn't confined to Israel. Across oceans and continents, eyes are fixed on Jerusalem. Not just out of curiosity, but out of conviction. In the United States alone, millions of evangelical Christians believe the temple must be rebuilt to fulfill biblical prophecy. specifically Revelation 11, which speaks of a temple standing in the last days, measured, watched, and ultimately shaken. To many, the restoration of the temple is not a theoretical hope. It's a necessary piece of God's plan. This belief is one of the driving forces behind Christian Zionism, a movement that supports Israel not only for political reasons, but as part of a divine timetable. And it's had very real influence. In 2017, President Donald Trump officially recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, a historic move. For many in the evangelical world, it echoed the biblical figure King Cyrus, the Persian ruler who enabled the Jews to rebuild their temple after exile. Trump was even compared to Cyrus in public speeches and religious broadcasts. Commemorative coins were minted with both faces side by side, Cyrus and Trump, marking what some saw as a prophetic fulfillment in real time. So, where does that leave us now? American policy, driven in part by theological belief, continues to shape the landscape around the Temple Mount. Funds, influence, and diplomatic protection have flowed in from Christian groups who see the rebuilding of the temple as part of God's end-time script. Which raises a startling question: is international politics unknowingly paving the way for prophecy? Because while world leaders debate borders and treaties, something far older is stirring beneath the surface. Something that speaks not of democracy or diplomacy, but of destiny. And once the foundation is laid, the prophetic clock ticks faster. Long before any of this, a prophecy was given. It came from the mouth of a man called Daniel, taken captive in Babylon. His words would echo through centuries, etched into what we now call the 70 Weeks prophecy. Found in Daniel 9, this prophecy lays out a divine timeline, 70 weeks of years, marked by the rebuilding of Jerusalem, the arrival of the Anointed One, and then a final, terrifying phase. The last week, the final 7 years, is what many believe holds the key to understanding the end of the age. Within that final stretch, Daniel speaks of an abomination of desolation, where someone profanes the holy place, someone who sets themselves up as God. So here's the sobering thought. Could the birth of the red heifer, the cutting of the stone, the political shifts in Jerusalem, all be signals that this final week is drawing near? Theologians are divided. Some believe that once the temple is rebuilt, it will welcome the true Messiah, ushering in an era of peace and redemption. Others fear a darker possibility, that a false Messiah, a deceiver, will step into that holy space, fulfilling Jesus' warning in Matthew 24, where he said, "When you see the abomination that causes desolation standing in the holy place, let the reader understand." It's not just a theological debate anymore. It's a real-world question with real-world implications. If the temple rises, who will enter it first? Because the structure may be built with human hands, but what enters it will shape the fate of nations. And so, the countdown continues. Quiet, steady, unstoppable. The prophecy of Daniel is no longer confined to ancient scrolls. It may be unfolding, moment by moment, in our own time. Look up, beyond the politics, beyond the stone and ash. Look to the skies. Because lately, the heavens have been anything but silent. In recent years, we've witnessed a rare series of blood moons, some of them aligning with major Jewish feasts: Passover, Tabernacles, and Tisha B'Av, the day both temples were destroyed. Astronomers called them coincidences. But to many believers, both Jewish and Christian, they're more than astronomical anomalies. They're signals. Then came the earthquakes, tremors centered around Jerusalem. Subtle, then stronger. Unsettling, as if something beneath the earth is shifting. At the same time, violent unrest has erupted on the Temple Mount. Clashes, tension, and moments where it feels like history is trying to repeat itself. Is it all random? Just noise in a chaotic world? Or is it a pattern? Throughout the ages, Jewish sages taught that when great spiritual transitions were about to happen, heaven would speak. Celestial signs, strange weather, unrest in sacred places, these weren't just happenings. They were warnings. Warnings that the divine order was being stirred. Across the ocean, Christian pastors are echoing the same concern, drawing links to Joel 2, where the prophet said, "The sun shall be turned to darkness, and the moon to blood, before the great and terrible day of the Lord." So now we must ask, are these natural events or prophetic alarms? Because suddenly everything seems to be moving at once. The red heifer is alive, the stones are being carved, the leaders are posturing, and now even the skies are shifting. Could it be that the physical world is mirroring something spiritual? That beneath the surface, an ancient rhythm has started again? One that the earth, the heavens, and even time itself can feel. And now, we arrive at the question that echoes louder than all the rest. What happens if they actually build it? The Third Temple, once just an idea, now a near reality, stands on the edge of history. But with it comes two very different futures. One path says the temple's return will bring divine fulfillment. The Messiah will come. The world will be restored. The age of peace will begin. The other path, equally rooted in Scripture, warns of a coming deception, a false peace, a man of lawlessness who will stand in the holy place and desecrate it, ushering in tribulation before the final judgment. The pattern is already in the past. Temple 1, built by Solomon, was destroyed by Babylon after idolatry and rebellion. Temple 2, restored after exile, was torn down by Rome following corruption and occupation. Temple 3, if built, will not just be a building, it will be a stage. But the question remains, will it be a house of peace or the stage for global turmoil? The stakes couldn't be higher. Because this isn't about religion alone, it's about politics, prophecy, and the soul of a nation, and maybe even the soul of the world. And whether one sees hope or danger, the temple's rising will mark the moment when ancient prophecy steps into modern reality, and there may be no going back. We began with a question, a red heifer, a pile of stones, a conflict that never fully rests. But now we see it more clearly. The red heifer lives and has passed the test of purity. The foundation stone has been carved according to biblical measurements. The political winds in Israel are shifting, even straining, and religious passion, once whispered, is now shouted. For the first time in 2,000 years, every piece is in place. Not someday, not theoretically. Now, and that changes everything. We are the first generation in millennia to stand at this threshold, to watch prophecy, politics, nature, and history converge on a single point, the Temple Mount. So now we must ask, not as spectators, but as participants in history, what happens next? Will this temple bring peace or prophecy? The questions may divide us, the answers may unfold slowly, but the signs are growing louder, and the world is watching. So we want to hear from you. Do you believe the Third Temple will bring peace or usher in end times prophecy? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let the conversation begin. And if you want to follow this journey as it unfolds, subscribe for updates. From prophecy to politics, signs to symbols, we'll be here to walk you through every revelation. Because history is turning its page, and you're living in the chapter that could change everything.